Hello and welcome to this autofocus test of the 50mm f2 Fuji lens with the Fujifilm X-T4. I wanted to see how this combo works for talking head segments, which I often record in this kind of area. And yeah, so this is basically a test primarily for myself, but I thought maybe some people might be interested in seeing the results. So just to recap, because I've already done a test on the 23mm f2 lens, which is right here, but now I'm doing it with the 50mm f2 Fuji lens. So to recap, I'm shooting in 4K 25p, so I've set the shutter speed to 1/50 to maintain the 180-degree rule or whatever, you know. And I'm using long GOP compression, but the highest bit rate, 400 megabytes per second. And so I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. I'm going to kind of move around laterally because this is kind of the position that I'm in. Not that I normally do this when I'm talking to camera, but I kind of want to see how the camera responds, how the Fujifilm X-T4 responds to this sort of thing, kind of do a bit of a stress test. Also, in terms of power management, the setting is boost, which should theoretically give us the best autofocus performance. And of course, the IBIS is turned off completely because the camera is on a tripod. You might have noticed that with the colors, I'm shooting this in classic negative film simulation, which I quite like. The dynamic range is set to 200, which means that the lowest ISO I can go to is at 320, but I've set it to 400 just to boost the exposure a tad. So there you go. I'm just giving you all these details to sort of test the autofocus as I rock back and forth to see if this keeps up with me. Maybe I could even kind of get closer and see like that. Not something that I can do on the 23 millimeter f2 necessarily, but I've tried to kind of keep the same framing roughly, very roughly probably, but I tried to kind of keep that in mind. But yeah, also the lens is right now is as open as it can be at f2, and let's go ahead actually and close it down to f2.8. There we go. So let's sit back down. Recording the audio on my phone, so that's why I'm holding that. But okay, so now we've stopped down to f2.8 to see if that changes the performance of the autofocus. So let's do again some rocking back and forth like this. Can it track me? I kind of can see the screen, but the camera's pretty far away, so I don't know. Let's see how it performs. The blinds are down, by the way, to kind of control the exposure while keeping the shutter speed at 1/50. Because there's no ND filter on the camera. I kind of wanted to try and keep things as fair as possible. There's only one of those basic kind of lens protection filters. Now forgetting what they're called, but yeah, basically just one basic filter in front that just merely protects the front element, and that's it. And that was the same with the 23mm f2, same thing, no NDs. I'll put a link in the description and in a card to that test so that you can compare it if you want to. Although really, I'm setting up these tests to compare two settings. So the face detect, which I'm doing right now, and the focus limiter, which I'm going to do next. Face detect, just so that you know, is set to face only. Eye tracking is off, to see if that helps with the autofocus performance, because I'm taking something off the Fujifilm X-T4's plate in terms of tracking. It's just looking for a face, not having to bother with the eyes. So yeah, we'll see if that gives a satisfactory performance. But basically now I'm going to switch over to the focus limiter. So now I am on the focus limiter setting, which means unfortunately I lose the face tracking. Fuji, please fix this. I think the Fujifilm X-T4 would really benefit from having face tracking available with the focus limiter. It would be a great thing to be able to do, to lock off a focus range but retain the face tracking feature. Because right now my only option is to use the general autofocus setting. You can have a static box. Okay, so now we're back, but I've set the autofocus with the focus limiter. So with a focus limiter, unfortunately, you can't use face detect. That's something actually that I would love Fujifilm to implement on the X-T4 through a firmware update, because that would really, I think, increase the utility of this camera if you're able to lock off a section of the focus range but add face detect. Even if it's not eye detect, I don't care, just face detect would be great to have that in addition to the focus limiter. But so now we're on the focus limiter with the autofocus. There isn't an autofocus box. You can have an autofocus box that doesn't move, doesn't track anything. That is one option. But since I don't like that much, it's just set to focus, general focus, let's say, all area focus, I don't know what it's called. But just so that you know, the focus limiter I set to start kind of here and to kind of end, I think, roughly kind of here. And so I have to be in between those two areas for me to be in focus, basically. But at the same time, since the autofocus is set to just evaluate the scene globally, things like me moving my hands or other elements of the scene could throw it off. So we'll see. I think generally when I record with the focus limiter, I try to move a lot initially so that it's like, wake up, Fujifilm X-T4, here I am. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. So I think another thing that I find sometimes is that I think the autofocus gets distracted by my hands moving, because I do talk with my hands a lot. So that's an advantage of the face detect, I guess. I'm gonna try not to talk with my hands, not to throw it off. And then I'm also gonna do the same kind of forward, backwards rocking motion that I did before, and let's see how that goes. So, and I have to be careful to be doing that within the kind of the focus range that I've set. But I think this should be within it. So let's see how it tracks that. Okay, so let's wrap this test up. I hope that you've had a chance to look at the footage. I certainly have, and I thought it was pretty eye-opening. First things first, I'm really glad that I brought the blinds down, because I think that really made my job a lot easier. I thought I would have to zoom in to tell any kind of shifts in focus or any kind of focus mishaps. But with the blinds down, I think it was very easy to tell when there were big shifts in focus. So onto the first main takeaway, which is that stopping down the lens to f2.8, which I've done now. I'm actually shooting this with a 23mm f2 and not the 50mm f2. But I think that stopping down the lens slightly, whatever lens you might have, really does help the Fujifilm X-T4 cope better with video autofocus performance. The second takeaway is that for a sort of talking head static shot type of scene that I had set up, my experience, the focus limiter yielded more reliable autofocus than using face tracking. I'm now shooting this actually in face detect just to see, and I just noticed that the box went somewhere else. So yeah, they're kind of really proving my point there, at least in my shooting scenarios. So what do you think? Do you have any tips to focusing video autofocus on the Fujifilm X-T4? I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions, and I'll let you leave those in the comments below. But I think for today, that'll do it, and I hope that you have a great day and that you take care. Have a good one.